Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going back in time a little to 2013 Baltimore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, using these meeting minutes from the City Board of Estimates meeting on September 18th.
Okay.
These minutes kind of act as like a window into the city's past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a snapshot of a community wrestling with some challenges that lots of cities still face today.
It's interesting because these minutes are more than just some, dry records, you know?
Oh,
You can really see the city struggling with that urban decay thing.
Yeah.
Searching for a path to revitalization.
So we're not just talking about, budgets and contracts.
Yeah.
This is, real people and real hopes for a better future.
Exactly. And the Eager Street Vacants to Value project really exemplifies this.
Okay.
They were tackling a problem that plagued Baltimore back then and still does today. All those vacant and blighted properties.
Oh, yeah. Vacant properties, those empty houses that drag down whole neighborhoods.
Mm.
I've seen them. They can be real eyesores.
Yeah.
So how did this Eager Street project plan to turn things around?
Well, picture this. Key blocks on Eager Street,
Right.
once, vibrant and full of life.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're just dotted with these empty, decaying structures.
Yeah.
The Vacants to Value initiative was spearheaded by a local group called HEBFACS.
HEBFACS.
They aimed to breathe new life into these blocks
Okay.
by creating affordable homeownership opportunities.
HEBFACS, that's the Historic East Baltimore Community Action Coalition, right?
Yes, that's them.
So this was a community-driven effort to try to solve a citywide problem.
Exactly. They didn't wait for someone else to fix things.
Yeah.
They took charge,
Good for them.
but they didn't go it alone.
Oh,
This was a true public-private partnership.
interesting.
HEBFACS teamed up with private investors and the Baltimore City Housing Department.
So they were pooling resources to make a bigger impact.
That's right.
I like it, a real collaborative approach.
Yeah.
So what exactly were they asking for from the City Board of Estimates in this meeting?
They requested $253,000 in funding through a program called BRNI, the Baltimore Regional Neighborhoods Initiative,
DRNI.
which was designed to support exactly this kind of community revitalization project.
Got it. So $250,000 to kickstart this transformation of Eager Street.
Yeah.
But what exactly were they hoping to achieve?
Mhm.
I mean, was it just about fixing up the physical houses?
It was about so much more than that.
Right.
Their ultimate goal was to create a more stable and vibrant residential community.
So it wasn't just about bricks and mortar.
Right.
It was about people and building a stronger sense of community.
Precisely. They thought that by creating those affordable homeownership opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
they could attract new residents,
Yeah.
reduce vacancy and blight,
Yeah.
and create a ripple effect of positive change throughout the neighborhood.
Yeah, I can see how that could work. A few new homeowners move in to fix up their properties, and suddenly the whole block starts looking better.
Right.
People feel safer, prouder of their community.
Exactly. And that can lead to increased property values,
Yeah.
which benefits everyone.
So this is a long-term vision for revitalization, not just a quick fix.
You got it.
It's really fascinating how a focused, community-driven initiative like this can tackle a complex problem like vacant housing.
Yeah.
But did the meeting minutes say anything about how HEBFACS planned to measure the success of this project?
That's a good question.
What would a win look like, both in the short term and down the road?
Well, the minutes themselves don't spell out specific metrics.
Okay,
But if we think about their goals, we can imagine what signs of progress they might have been looking for.
all right, let's put on our analytical hats.
Okay.
What would show that this Eager Street project was on the right track in the short term?
I think you'd want to see those vacant properties being acquired and rehabilitated.
Okay.
Imagine driving down Eager Street
Oh,
and seeing construction crews busy at work bringing those houses back to life.
I like it. That's a tangible sign of progress.
Right. And I bet the neighbors would be happy to see those eyesores finally getting some attention.
Totally. What about in the longer term?
Yeah.
What would signal lasting success?
That's when it gets interesting.
Okay.
You'd want to see those renovated houses filling up with families.
Oh, yeah.
Kids play on the sidewalks.
That's cute.
A sense of vibrancy returning to the block.
So not just renovated houses, but a revitalized community.
Right.
A place where people want to put down roots and build a future.
Exactly. You'd hope to see a decrease in crime,
Of course.
improvements in school performance,
Mhm.
and a more active and engaged resident base.
All signs of a healthy, thriving community.
That's the goal.
It's a pretty ambitious vision.
Yeah,
But let's face it, no project is without its challenges, right?
you're telling me.
Even with the best intentions and a solid plan,
Mm-hmm.
There are always potential roadblocks.
There are always unforeseen hurdles and unexpected twists and turns along the way.
Now, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
What challenges do you think the Eager Street Vacants to Value initiative might have faced?
$253,000 is a decent chunk of change,
Yeah.
but it's not exactly a bottomless pit of money.
No, it's definitely just a starting point.
Yeah.
Large-scale revitalization requires sustained investment over time.
Right.
So securing additional funding would be crucial.
So keeping the money flowing is essential.
Definitely.
What else could have thrown a wrench in the works?
Well, you could have residents who are resistant to new development, concerned about being displaced,
Yeah.
or skeptical of the project's long-term impact.
Yeah. Change can be scary,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to your home and your neighborhood.
Yeah, for sure.
What strategies could ABCCAC have used to address those concerns and try to build consensus?
Well, transparency and communication are key.
I could see that.
Imagine AGPCAC holding regular community meetings,
Oh,
explaining the project's goals and benefits,
yeah.
giving residents a chance to ask questions
Yeah.
and voice their concerns.
So making sure residents feel heard and understood, not just talked at.
Good point. What other challenges spring to mind?
Well, the complexity of rehabilitating older properties is a big one.
What do you mean?
You never know what hidden problems might lurk behind those walls.
Oh, right.
Lead paint asbestos.
Oh, yeah.
Structural damage.
So budgeting for surprises and having a contingency plan is essential.
Definitely.
What about attracting those new homeowners?
Yeah.
That seems crucial to the initiative's success.
Oh, for sure. Those rehabbed homes need to be not only affordable, but also appealing to potential buyers.
I see. So highlighting the neighborhood's strengths.
Yes.
Its unique character and the amenities and opportunities it offers.
Exactly.
So selling the dream, not just the house itself.
You got it.
Good strategy. This is getting pretty complex. Any other potential pitfalls?
Let me think. Managing the partnership itself is another one.
Oh, right. This is a public-private collaboration.
Yeah.
And those can be tricky to navigate.
Okay.
What could have gone wrong on that front?
Well, conflicting priorities. Or communication breakdowns between HBCAC, the city, and the private investors.
Yeah.
That could have created tension and hindered progress.
So making sure everyone is on the same page
Right.
and pulling in the same direction is critical.
It is.
This has been incredibly insightful.
Yeah.
We've uncovered some fascinating threads about this Eager Street initiative.
Yeah,
But there's still so much more to explore in these minutes.
there is.
We've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, these meeting minutes capture a specific moment in Baltimore's history.
Mm-hmm.
They reveal a city wrestling with complex issues like vacant housing,
Okay.
economic development,
Right.
and community revitalization.
It's a reminder that even those seemingly mundane government proceedings can be surprisingly dramatic
Yeah,
and insightful.
they are.
They offer a glimpse into the struggles, the hopes, and the dreams of a community in transition.
You said it.
And you know what?
What?
There's even more to uncover in these minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we'll be back after a short break. To delve into some of the other fascinating details from this Baltimore City Board of Estimates meeting,
That's good.
stay tuned.
All right. So we've been exploring this Eager Street Vacants to Value initiative, this project that aimed to revitalize a Baltimore neighborhood through affordable homeownership.
Right.
But as we go deeper into these meeting minutes,
Yeah.
we see that this initiative was just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
That's right. It's like we're starting to see a bigger picture emerge.
Yeah.
A snapshot of a city grappling with all these different challenges, from
Yeah.
economic development to social equity.
Exactly. And one thing that kept coming up in these minutes
Yeah.
was the city's efforts to support minority and women-owned businesses.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading about those protests
Yeah.
and concern.
It definitely piqued my curiosity, too.
It really did.
Yeah.
What was the story there? Who was speaking up?
Okay.
And what were they so upset about?
One voice that really stood out was Arnold Jolove.
Arnold Jolove.
He represented a construction company called JLN Construction Services,
Okay.
and they had submitted a bid for a library renovation project.
JLN Construction, weren't they the lowest bidder?
They were?
And I'm guessing their bid didn't get accepted.
You guessed right.
Okay, so what's the issue?
JLN was deemed non-compliant
Non-compliant.
with the city's Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise Law.
Hold on, another acronym.
I know, right?
Can you break down this MWBO thing for me?
Okay, so imagine you're a small business owner
Okay.
trying to compete for city contracts.
Okay.
It can be tough to break into that world,
I bet.
especially if you're a minority or women-owned business.
Yeah.
The MWBOO was a local law designed to level the playing field
Right.
and ensure these businesses had a fair shot at securing city contracts.
I see.
It set goals for the percentage of contract dollars that should go to these businesses.
Okay, so a way to promote economic inclusion
Yes.
and create opportunities for those who might otherwise be shut out. Makes sense. But how did this impact JLN Construction's bid? I mean, they were the lowest bidder.
They were, but the minutes show that JLN hadn't partnered with enough certified minority or women-owned businesses to meet the MWBOO goals for that library project.
So even though their bid was the most affordable,
Uh-huh.
it got rejected.
It did.
Wow, so even being the most cost-effective option wasn't enough.
Nope.
They had to play by these MWBOO rules.
Right.
No wonder Mr. Jolivet was upset.
Yeah.
So what did he have to say about all this?
He argued that the city's practice of rejecting bids
Okay.
based solely on MWBOO noncompliance was unfair.
Okay.
And went against the city charter,
Which says?
which requires awarding contracts to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder.
So he felt like the city was prioritizing MWBO compliance over taxpayer savings.
Exactly.
I could see how that would be frustrating.
Yeah.
Did he offer any solutions?
He proposed a pretty bold move.
No.
He wanted the city to reject all the bids
Really?
and re-advertise the project. His thinking was that contractors might sharpen their pencils
Okay.
and come back with even better prices,
Interesting.
potentially saving the city over $800,000.
Wow. He even appealed directly to the mayor,
He did.
urging her to do the right thing.
Right. It sounds like he was making a passionate plea for fairness
Yeah.
and fiscal responsibility.
So how did the city respond to Mr. Jolivet's arguments?
The city solicitor acknowledged his concerns,
Okay.
but argued that accepting his proposal
Yeah.
would essentially undermine the MWBOO law.
So making it ineffective. So a clash of values,
Mm-hmm.
saving taxpayer dollars,
Yeah.
versus upholding the spirit of the MWBOO law.
It was a real dilemma for the Board of Estimates.
How did they ultimately vote?
They sided with the city solicitor.
Okay.
They denied the protest
Mhm.
and awarded the contract to the next lowest bidder,
Who was?
JAK Construction Company,
JAK Construction.
who were in compliance with the MWBOO requirements.
But JAK Construction got the contract, even though their bid was over $500,000 higher.
That's right.
I imagine that decision must have sparked some debate.
Absolutely. This one vote really highlights the complex trade-offs involved in these social equity programs.
Yeah, it makes you think about things like
Hmm.
cost effectiveness,
Yeah,
fairness,
right.
and the potential impact on minority and women-owned businesses themselves.
It's a lot to consider.
This deep dive is really revealing the complexities of city government
It is,
and all the tough choices that leaders have to make.
for sure.
And it sounds like we're not done with this whole MWBOO discussion.
Not yet.
Didn't you mention another public comment related to this issue?
Yes, there was another protest.
Oh.
This one from Kim Trueheart.
Kim Trueheart.
She actually filed 2 protests,
Two?
both targeting contracts that she felt undermined the MWBOO law.
Kim Trueheart. I remember her name from the minute.
Yeah,
She seemed pretty fired up about this issue.
she did.
So what were her specific concerns?
Okay, so one of her protests was against the renewal of a contract with the Long Fence Company.
Long Fence Company.
They'd been awarded several contracts over the years,
Okay.
but had consistently struggled to meet those MWBOO minority and women-owned business participation targets.
So a company with a history of non-compliance,
Mm-hmm.
and the city was considering renewing their contract anyway.
They were, but with a catch.
What was that?
They were planning to reduce the MWBOO goals for Long Fence.
So lowering the bar for a company that had already failed to meet the original standards.
Yeah, it seems a bit backwards.
It does. What was the rationale behind that decision?
The minutes don't really explain the city's reasoning,
Okay.
but you can imagine the pressures they might have been facing.
Right. yeah.
Maybe a need for reliable contractors,
Right.
concerns about cost,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps even some political factors at play.
Yeah, those behind-the-scenes considerations can be hard to decipher.
They can.
But clearly, Miss Trueheart wasn't happy about it.
No, she wasn't.
What were her specific objections to Long Fence?
She argued that Long Fence had blatantly and continuously skirted the law,
Okay.
pointing to their past instances of noncompliance.
Wow. She even called for the MWBOO staff to be replaced,
She did!
claiming they weren't doing enough to enforce the law?
Right, she was taking on both the company
Yeah.
and the city agency responsible for overseeing the whole MWBO program.
So did anyone from Long Fence show up to defend themselves?
They did.
Oh.
A representative named Phil Cronin argued that they'd actually exceeded the MWBOO requirement for their current contract,
Interesting.
claiming a duplicate purchase order had messed up the numbers previously.
So a bit of accounting confusion muddying the waters.
Yeah.
Did the city buy his explanation?
Not entirely. The city's MWBOO director countered that their records still showed Long Fence was well below the required target,
Really?
even with the adjusted numbers.
Wow, he pointed out a pattern of noncompliance. Going back to...
Dating back to 2003.
So a he said, she said situation. With conflicting data points.
Uh-huh. How did the mayor react to all of this?
Yeah, what did she think?
She seemed pretty skeptical of Long Fence's claims,
Oh.
emphasizing that their track record was troubling.
Hmm.
She even drew a comparison to the Grand Prix race,
The Grand Prix?
which Long Fence had been involved in.
Okay.
She suggested that they seemed more willing to comply with MWBOO requirements when dealing with private entities rather than the city.
Ooh, a subtle jab, implying a double standard.
Yeah.
So how did this whole Long Fence saga end? Did the city cave to Mrs. Trueheart's protest?
Well,
Or stick with their plan to renew the contract?
the mayor, clearly unconvinced by Long Fence's explanations
Yeah.
and concerned about their history of noncompliance, made a motion to reject the contract renewal, and the board approved.
Wow. A victory for Miss Trueheart.
Yeah.
And a clear message from the city that they weren't going to tolerate repeated MWBO violations.
Right.
But what about Miss Trueheart's other protests?
Yeah.
The one against the Department of Recreation and Parks.
Oh, that one gets to the heart of community needs
Okay.
and how resources are allocated.
Okay.
Remember the Community Development Block Grant,
The CDBG?
or CDBG, that we discussed earlier?
Yeah.
The city was planning to give $271,349 of those federal funds
Dude.
to the Department of Recreation and Parks
Okay.
to support youth programs at 5 recreation centers.
Right. Using federal funds for important community initiatives.
Yeah.
What was Miss Trueheart's issue with that?
She argued that the Recreation and Parks Department had a history of mismanaging funds
Okay.
and failing to deliver on its promises to the community.
So she wasn't against funding youth programs.
Right.
She was questioning whether the Recreation and Parks Department was the best entity to handle those funds.
Exactly. She called for an open and competitive bidding process
Okay.
to allow other organizations a chance to secure those funds.
Interesting. Hoping they might be more effective.
Right.
Did she offer any specific examples to support her claims?
The minutes don't provide that level of detail,
Okay.
but her protest does highlight a common tension in city government.
Like,
Should funds be directed to established agencies,
Yeah.
even with their flaws?
Right.
Or should there be more opportunities for smaller community-based organizations
okay.
to compete for those resources?
That's a tough question.
It is.
Both sides have valid arguments.
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand, you want to support established institutions that
Yeah.
have the experience and the infrastructure to deliver services.
Right.
But on the other hand,
Yeah.
you don't want to stifle innovation
Right.
or overlook the valuable work being done by those smaller grassroots organizations.
It's all about finding the right balance, accountability, efficiency, and community empowerment.
So did the city engage with Mr. Trueheart's concerns about the Recreation and Parks Department, or did they just brush her protests aside?
The board acknowledged receiving her protest, but stated that since she didn't have a specific interest different from the general public,
Yeah.
they wouldn't hear her case.
But they did forward her concerns
They did.
to the Recreation and Parks Department
Right.
for a direct response.
Yeah. So a bit of a bureaucratic shuffle,
Right.
directing her concerns through the proper channels.
Did the minutes indicate whether Mrs. Trueheart ever received a satisfactory response?
Unfortunately, we don't know the outcome of that exchange.
Okay.
But the fact that she filed these protests
Yeah.
and showed up at the meeting
Right.
speaks volumes about her passion for her community and her determination to hold the city accountable for its actions.
She sounds like a real force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, she does.
It's inspiring to see citizens actively engaged in shaping their city's policies
Yeah,
and advocating for what they believe in.
absolutely. These public comments add a whole new dimension to these meeting minutes.
They do.
They reveal the human stories,
Mm-hmm.
the passions, and the struggles behind all the bureaucratic jargon.
You're absolutely right. And we've only just begun to explore the depths of these meeting minutes.
I know there are still more fascinating initiatives
Yeah.
and decisions documented in these pages.
Giving us a glimpse into the inner workings of Baltimore City government in 2013.
Exactly.
All right, we're back and ready to jump into the final part of these Board of Estimates meeting minutes.
It's pretty amazing how much these minutes cover.
I know, right?
We see the board tackling everything from routine expenditures to major development projects.
Mm-hmm. It really gives you a sense of just how many issues they dealt with.
Yeah, it does.
So a real behind-the-scenes look at how a city runs.
Mm-hmm.
What else stood out to you as particularly interesting?
Well, a series of discussions involving the Department of Housing and Community Development really caught my eye.
The DHCD.
Yeah, they were seeking approval for a bunch of land disposition agreements.
So basically selling off city-owned properties to private developers. Oh, so like more of those efforts to try to revitalize vacant and blighted properties.
Yes, like we saw with that Eager Street project.
Right, right. Were all of these focused on creating affordable housing?
Some were, but not all of them. For example, there was a deal involving 6 vacant buildings on North Bradford Street.
Okay.
The DHCD wanted to sell them to a developer called Hartford Homes, LLC,
Okay.
for less than their appraised value.
Selling below market value.
Uh-huh.
I bet that raised some eyebrows.
You think?
Oh.
What was the justification for that?
Yeah, why do that?
Well, the idea was that the developer's renovation plans would end up benefiting the community in the long run.
So things like,
The minutes mention eliminating blight,
okay.
getting those properties back on the tax rolls,
Yeah.
and addressing the extensive repairs they needed.
Right. So the city was willing to take a bit of a financial hit up front in the hopes of achieving those broader goals.
Exactly. It's about weighing those immediate costs against the potential long-term benefits.
And those benefits could be like,
Things like increased property values
okay.
and a revitalized neighborhood.
Right.
And that can ripple outward and have a positive impact on the whole city.
It's really interesting to see how these decisions get made.
It is.
All the different factors that go into the equation.
Yeah.
Did all of those land disposition agreements get approved?
Most did. But one deal faced a bit more scrutiny.
Guess one.
It involved the sale of 2 properties on McCullough Street
Okay.
to a developer called RAJM Pro, LLC.
RNJM Pro. What was the issue with this deal?
Well, it seems like the price was a bit of a sticking point.
Okay.
The minutes indicate that the developer would be purchasing the properties for less than $50,000
Wow.
and wouldn't be receiving any city funds or incentives for the purchase or rehabilitation.
So a pretty sweet deal for the developer.
Yeah, I can see why that might have raised some questions.
For sure. Did the minutes mention any specific concerns about the McCullough Street sale?
They don't go into detail, unfortunately.
Okay.
But it's clear that the board really considered all the potential costs and benefits before voting to approve the deal.
It makes you realize that these decisions are rarely simple.
No, they're not.
There are always trade-offs and competing interests to balance.
Definitely.
Speaking of challenging decisions,
Yeah.
remember that funding request from the Department of Recreation and Parks?
Yes,
The one that sparked a protest from Kim Trueheart?
right. The one involving community development block grant funds for youth programs at those rec centers.
Right. Did it ultimately get approved?
It did.
Even with Ms. Trueheart's concerns about the department's effectiveness.
Even with those concerns, the board decided to move forward with the funding.
I guess they felt that after reviewing her concerns, the Recreation and Parks Department was still the best option for delivering those services.
Did he so?
It really reinforces the idea that there are always multiple perspectives at play.
Right.
Different ways of looking at the same issue.
These minutes really offer a fascinating look into how city government works. We see the board struggling with limited resources,
Yeah.
competing priorities, and the pressure to make decisions that benefit everyone.
It's been a real eye-opener,
It has.
digging into these seemingly mundane documents
Yeah,
and uncovering all the stories, the debates, and the dilemmas within them.
definitely.
I feel like I have a much better understanding of how cities actually function now,
Me too.
all the challenges they face,
Mm-hmm.
and that constant effort to try to balance the needs of so many different people.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks to your expertise, I think we've managed to extract some really valuable insights from this deep dive
I hope so.
into this Baltimore City Board of Estimates meeting back in 2013.
September 18th, 2013.
It's been a fascinating journey, and I hope our listeners feel the same way.
I agree. And for our listeners out there, I'll leave you with this thought. What are the key issues facing your city today?
That's a good one.
Are there parallels to the challenges Baltimore faced back in 2013?
Hmm.
I encourage you to explore your own city's history
Yeah.
and engage in that conversation about its future.
That's a great call to action. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
We'll be back soon with another fascinating exploration of the ideas and the information that shape our world.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, stay curious.